My son sent me a text on December 10th that changed everything. Mom, about Christmas. Olivia's parents are coming to stay with us. It's going to be their Christmas. Family only. We'll catch up with you in the new year. Family only. As if I weren't family. As if I hadn't just given them $205,000 over the past 3 years. They had no idea what was coming. By Christmas morning, their entire world would collapse, and I wouldn't lose a single night's sleep over it. I'm glad you're here with me today. Please stay until the end of this story and let me know what city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. My name is Hannah Brooks. I'm 67 years old, and I've spent my entire adult life being too soft. That's what my late husband Richard used to tell me anyway. Hannah, he'd say, that gentle smile playing at the corners of his mouth. One day someone's going to mistake your kindness for weakness. And when that happens, I hope you remember you're stronger than you think. I wish he were here now. He'd probably say, "I told you so," with that same smile. Then he'd hold my hand and help me figure out what to do next. But Richard died 5 years ago, leaving me alone in our 3-bedroom colonial in suburban Connecticut, with nothing but memories and regrets. I was standing in my old office at Riverside Elementary last week when all of this really started to sink in. They'd called me back to help train the new principal. 35 years I'd spent in that building. 35 years of budget meetings and parent conferences and standardized tests. The walls were covered with photos of graduating 5th graders year after year of hopeful faces. I'd known most of their parents, some of their grandparents. "Mrs. Brooks, we miss you so much," the new principal said. She was young, enthusiastic, probably thought I was ancient. "The kids still ask about you," I smiled politely. But all I could think was I gave this place 3 decades of my life. I missed soccer games and school plays. I worked late while Richard ate dinner alone. I put my family second because I thought I was doing something important. And maybe I was, but the price was high. Richard used to joke that I was married to my job. He never said it with anger, just resignation. We were comfortable together, affectionate even. But intimacy, real closeness, that required time I never seemed to have. When he got sick pancreatic cancer stage 4, no warning, I finally slowed down, took a leave of absence. Spent those last 2 years actually being present. It wasn't enough. It's never enough when you're making up for decades of absence. The night he died holding my hand in that sterile hospital room, he whispered, "You're going to be okay, Hannah. You're tougher than you know. Just don't let anyone take advantage of that good heart of yours." I promised him I wouldn't. I'm breaking that promise now. Or maybe I'm finally keeping it. Richard left me more comfortable than I'd expected. Between his life insurance and our savings, I had about $850,000 in the bank. Not wealthy by Connecticut standards, but enough to retire without worry. I didn't tell anyone the exact amount. Not even Michael, our son. Maybe that was my first mistake. Or maybe it was my smartest move. Michael is 35 now. He was 7 when I became principal, 23 when I finally made it to one of his college events. A good kid despite my absence. Smart, driven, successful in his own right. He works as a corporate lawyer in Manhattan. Makes good money. Or at least he should be making good money. That's what I kept telling myself every time he asked for help. I first met Olivia Chen 3.5 years ago at their engagement party in a trendy Soho loft that probably cost more to rent for one night than I spent on groceries in a year. She was beautiful in that carefully constructed way, perfect highlights, perfect makeup, perfect dress that showed just enough. 29 years old and already a marketing executive at some firm in Midtown. "Mrs. Brooks," she'd air-kissed both my cheeks like we were old friends. "Michael has told me so much about you. A school principal for 35 years. That's incredible. So important, shaping young minds." The words were right, but her eyes were already scanning the room looking for someone more interesting. I should have seen it then. Michael was glowing that night, his arm around Olivia's waist, introducing her to everyone like she was a prize he'd won. And maybe she was. She came from a marketing dynasty, or that's what I thought at the time. Confident, connected, the kind of woman who knew which fork to use at fancy dinners. "Mom, isn't she amazing?" Michael whispered to me during a quiet moment. "I can't believe she chose me." That should have been my second warning. My son, a successful lawyer, acting like he'd won the lottery by landing a woman who treated waiters like furniture. But I was so happy to see him happy. After Richard died, Michael had been my anchor. He called every day, visited every Sunday. We'd have dinner together and talk about everything and nothing. I didn't want to lose that. So when Olivia pulled me aside near the end of the party and said, "I just want you to know I'm going to take such good care of your son," I believed her. I wanted to believe her. The wedding was 8 months later. Small intimate at a country club in Westchester County. Olivia's parents flew in from Ohio. Tim and Linda, nice enough people who seemed overwhelmed by the whole production. I paid for the flowers. Olivia had very specific tastes. "Mom, you don't have to do this," Michael said when I wrote the check. $22,000 for flowers alone. "I want to," I told him. And I did. He was my only child. I'd missed so much of his life already. Olivia had kissed my cheek. "You're so generous, Hannah. I hope you know how much this means to us." I felt warm, included, necessary. I should have felt used. I learned more about Olivia's real background over the next year in small pieces that didn't fit together until much later. She wasn't from money. Her father had owned a small construction business in Cleveland that went bankrupt when she was 16. They'd lost their house, moved 4 times in 3 years while Tim scrambled for work, and Linda worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. Olivia put herself through Ohio State on scholarships and student loans, then clawed her way to New York with nothing but ambition and a desperate need to never feel poor again. I understood that. I respected it even. What I didn't understand was why she needed to pretend. Why the elaborate backstory about family connections and old money. Why the desperate need to appear as something she wasn't. Michael told me once late one night after too much wine, "Olivia's terrified of being poor again. Like irrationally terrified. She checks our bank account 5 times a day. She can't sleep if we don't have at least 20,000 in savings." "That must be hard for both of you," I'd said carefully. "It is, but I get it. Her dad's bankruptcy destroyed their family. Her parents divorced 2 years later. She barely speaks to her father now." He'd looked at me with such earnestness. "I just want her to feel safe, you know." I knew. God help me, I knew exactly what that felt like. The first year of their marriage was good. Better than good. They lived in a modest apartment in Brooklyn. Michael was working 80-hour weeks at his firm trying to make partner. Olivia was building her career. They were busy, but they made time. Sunday dinners at my house became our tradition. I'd cook pot roast or lasagna, and we'd sit around Richard's old dining table and talk. Really talk. Olivia would tell stories about her ridiculous clients doing impressions that made Michael laugh so hard he'd choke on his wine. Michael would complain about his senior partners in that way that's not really complaining, just venting. And I'd listen, just grateful to be included. "Your house is so charming," Olivia said one Sunday, running her hand over the vintage wallpaper in my dining room. "Very lived in." I didn't catch the edge in her voice. Not then. "It needs updating," I admitted. "Richard and I always meant to renovate, but we never got around to it." She'd smiled that perfect smile. "It has character, though. That's worth something." Michael shot her a look I didn't understand at the time. Year 2 was when things started to shift. The Sunday dinners became every other week, then once a month. "We're just so swamped, Mom," Michael would say, his voice apologetic. "You understand, right?" I understood. I'd been young once, consumed by career ambition. I told myself it was natural. But the phone calls got shorter too. Michael stopped sharing details about his life. Our conversations became surface level, pleasant but empty. "How's work?" I'd ask. "Good. Busy. You know how it is." I didn't actually. Not anymore. That was also the year they started asking for money. The first request came in February. Michael called his voice tight with stress. "Mom, I hate to ask this, but Olivia and I went over budget on the wedding, by a lot, and with her student loans and my law school debt, we're drowning a little. Would you be able to help just $25,000? We'll pay you back as soon as we can." $25,000. I'd hesitated, but only for a moment. "Of course, sweetheart. Let me transfer it tomorrow." The relief in his voice was palpable. "Thank you, Mom. Seriously. We'll pay you back within the year, I promise." They didn't, of course. When I gently mentioned it 6 months later, Olivia had laughed, a light tinkling laugh that made me feel small. "Oh, Hannah, you can't put a price on family, can you?" The requests kept coming. In year 3, they found their dream house in Westchester County, a beautiful colonial with a 3-car garage and a gourmet kitchen. $2 million. We can't afford the down payment, Michael admitted. Mom, I know I still owe you from before, but this house is perfect. It's an investment in our future. Could you help us? Just with the down payment, $85,000. I said yes because I wanted to help, because I was his mother, because somewhere deep down I thought if I helped enough I'd earn my place in their lives. But the paperwork came back with my name as a co-signer on the mortgage. Michael's debt-to-income ratio was too high without me. It's just temporary, he'd assured me. We'll refinance as soon as I make partner. I signed. 6 months later, Olivia's boutique marketing agency needed funding. I've got this incredible opportunity, Hannah, she'd told me over coffee, one of our rare one-on-one meetings. A chance to start my own firm, but I need capital, just $35,000. She'd shown me a business plan. It looked professional, impressive even. I'll make you a partner, she'd offered. 20% equity. This is going to be huge. I wrote the check. The agency folded 8 months later. Olivia never mentioned my investment again. When I asked about it once, she'd waved her hand dismissively. These things happen in business, Hannah. You win some, you lose some. My $35,000 apparently was the lose sum. By the time year 3 rolled around, I'd given them over $200,000. House down payment. Car loan, a luxury SUV, because Olivia said Michael's old Honda was embarrassing for a lawyer of his caliber. Her failed business. Emergency expenses that I later realized were a vacation to Bali and new furniture, and I'd seen none of it back. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching myself disappear from their lives while my bank account grew lighter. Sunday dinners stopped completely. Michael's calls came once a week, then once every 2 weeks, then only when he needed something. When I'd suggest getting together, there was always an excuse. We're renovating the guest bathroom. Olivia's parents are visiting. Work is just crazy right now. I started keeping a calendar marking the days between seeing my son. The gaps grew longer and longer. 60 days, 90 days, 112 days. I spent 3 weeks preparing for Thanksgiving. I'd offered to host like I always did. Michael had said yes like he always did. I'd planned the entire menu around his favorites. Turkey with sage stuffing the way Richard used to make it. Cranberry sauce from scratch. 3 kinds of pie. I cleaned the house top to bottom. Put fresh sheets on the guest bed. Bought an expensive wine Olivia had mentioned liking once. At 2 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day, with the turkey in the oven and the table set for 3, my phone rang. It was Michael. Mom, about Thanksgiving. I knew from his tone. I knew before he even said it. Olivia's parents really want us there this year. They're having a hard time. Her dad's health isn't great, and it would mean a lot to them if we came to Ohio. My hands went cold. You committed to coming here, Michael. I've been cooking for days. I know, and I'm sorry, but this is important to Olivia. Her family needs us. Her family needs us. What about me? The words came out smaller than I intended. Don't I need you? Silence on the other end. Then carefully, Mom, you're strong. You're independent. Olivia's parents they're fragile right now. You understand, right? I understood. I understood that I was being erased, piece by piece, holiday by holiday. But what I said was, of course, sweetheart. Family comes first. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. We'll make it up to you, I promise. He hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that call, staring at the turkey in the oven. 18 pounds of bird for one person. The dining room table looked absurd. 3 place settings, autumn centerpiece, good china that hadn't been used in years. I thought about calling someone. My friend Sarah, my former colleagues, anyone. But the thought of explaining why I was alone on Thanksgiving, why my only son had chosen someone else's family over his own mother, was too humiliating. So I ate alone. I set one place at the table, served myself a plate, poured a glass of wine, and I sat there in the dining room Richard and I had shared for 40 years, eating turkey that tasted like sand, wondering when exactly I had become disposable to my own child. The worst part, a small, shameful part of me, wasn't even surprised, because I remembered doing this exact same thing to Richard's mother 30 years ago. I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone, not even Richard. When Michael was 5 years old, we spent Thanksgiving with my mother-in-law, Eleanor. She'd cooked for days, made all of Richard's favorites, set the table beautifully. She was so excited to have us, and I hated every minute of it. Eleanor was old-fashioned. She'd wanted me to stay home with Michael instead of pursuing my career. She'd made comments about my modern ideas about parenting. She'd questioned my decisions constantly. So that year I'd convinced Richard we should start our own Thanksgiving tradition. Just the three of us. Your mother will understand, I'd told him. We're building our own family now. Richard had looked uncomfortable, but he'd agreed. He always agreed when I pushed hard enough. We'd called Eleanor 2 days before Thanksgiving and canceled. I heard her voice on the phone trying to sound understanding. Of course, dear. You young people need your own traditions. I'll be just fine. She spent Thanksgiving alone. Richard found out later from a neighbor. We never talked about it, but I saw the way Richard looked at me sometimes after that, a quiet disappointment he never voiced. Eleanor died 3 years later, alone in a nursing home, estranged from both her sons. Richard and I attended the funeral. I stood there in my black dress watching them lower her into the ground, and I felt nothing but guilt. I had started this. I had normalized the idea that Eleanor was optional, that she was someone we saw when convenient, not because she mattered. And now, 30 years later, my son was doing the same thing to me. Karma apparently has a long memory. December arrived with its usual festive chaos. Neighborhood lights twinkling on every house. Salvation Army bells on street corners. The scent of pine and cinnamon everywhere I went. I'd always loved Christmas. Richard and I had made it magical when Michael was young. We'd had traditions. Christmas Eve pajamas. Hot chocolate with homemade marshmallows. Reading "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" by the fireplace. Even after Richard died, Michael and I had maintained some of those traditions. Decorating the tree together. Watching It's a Wonderful Life. Our special time. Sacred time. I started decorating on December 1st. Pulled out all the boxes from the attic. The ornaments Michael had made in elementary school construction paper snowflakes and popsicle stick reindeer. His stocking hand-knitted by Eleanor before she died. The framed photo of the three of us from 20 years ago when life still made sense. I texted Michael a picture of the tree. Getting festive, can't wait to see you both for Christmas. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, looks great, Mom. Talk soon. That should have been my warning. On December 10th at 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text message. Not a call. A text. I was in bed reading. I picked up my phone expecting something mundane. Maybe Michael asking for a recipe. Maybe a funny meme Olivia had seen. Instead, I read, "Mom, about Christmas. Olivia's parents are coming to stay with us. It's going to be their Christmas. Family only. We'll catch up with you in the new year. Hope you understand." I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. Family only. As if I weren't family. As if I hadn't given birth to him, raised him, sacrificed for him. As if 35 years of being his mother counted for nothing. As if $205,000 bought me exactly 0 consideration. My hands started shaking. That deep, trembling rage that starts in your stomach and spreads through your entire body until you can barely hold on to your phone. I called him immediately. He answered on the 5th ring. Background noise television, Olivia's laugh, normal evening sounds. "Mom, hey! Did you get my text?" "Yes, I got your text, Michael. I don't understand. Christmas has always been our time. Can't we at least have Christmas Eve together?" Silence, then muffled voices. Olivia's voice sharp and insistent, though I couldn't make out words. When Michael spoke again, his tone had changed, harder, almost hostile. "Mom, you need to accept that things are different now. I have a wife. Her family matters too. You're being selfish." Selfish. The word hit me like a slap. "I've never asked you for anything except time, Michael." "That's not true." His voice was rising now, and I could hear Olivia's influence in every syllable. "You're always guilt-tripping me. Always making me feel bad. Olivia says you're manipulative, and honestly, I'm starting to see it." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Michael, that's not fair. We don't want you there for Christmas, Mom. We need space. We just need you to back off, okay?" The line went dead. I sat there in my bed, phone still pressed to my ear, staring at the wall. Michael had never spoken to me like that. Never. Not in 35 years. Even during his rebellious teenage phase, even when he was stressed about college or law school, he'd never been cruel. This was Olivia. Her words coming out of his mouth. Her poison turning my gentle son into someone I didn't recognize. But also, and this was the thought that made my hands shake even harder, maybe he'd always felt this way. Maybe I'd been fooling myself all along. Maybe I was the problem. I got out of bed and walked downstairs to the living room. The Christmas tree was lit ornaments twinkling. All those decorations I'd spent hours putting up. The little touches I'd added because I thought my son would see them and smile. I stood there in my quiet house, looking at the stocking with Michael's name embroidered in red thread, and I nodded to myself. A silent acknowledgement of a truth I could no longer deny. I had lost my son. Or maybe I'd never really had him at all. Maybe I'd been so busy trying not to be Eleanor, trying not to be the intrusive old-fashioned mother-in-law, that I'd let myself become nothing. Optional. Disposable. But there was another truth crystallizing in my mind. Cold and clear, and absolutely certain. They had underestimated me. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went to Richard's old desk in the study, the one I'd kept exactly as he'd left it, and pulled out my financial records. If I was going to be treated like a transaction, then it was time to view this relationship through the same lens. The numbers told a story I'd been too hopeful or too blind to see clearly. 3 years ago, $85,000 for the down payment on their Westchester house. Michael had promised to pay me back within 2 years. He'd said it in an email. "We'll pay you back as soon as we can, Mom. I promise." Written proof. A loan, not a gift. 2 years ago, $35,000 for Olivia's boutique marketing agency. "I'll make you a partner," she'd said. I had the paperwork somewhere. 20% equity in a business that no longer existed. 18 months ago, $42,000 for Michael's luxury SUV. The car loan was in my name because his debt-to-income ratio was too high. Primary account holder. Technically, the car belonged to me. 1 year ago, $28,000 for unexpected expenses. I'd learned later through a casual comment from Olivia's Instagram that unexpected expenses meant a vacation to Bali and new dining room furniture. 6 months ago, $15,000 for emergency medical bills that I now suspected were cosmetic procedures for Olivia. A tummy tuck, maybe. Or that nose job she'd mentioned wanting. The total came to $205,000. $205,000 of my retirement savings. The life insurance money Richard had left me to live on. The security he'd worked 40 years to provide. Gone. And for what? To be told I wasn't wanted at Christmas. To be called manipulative by a woman who'd taken my money and given me nothing but contempt in return. I pulled up my bank account on the computer. $643,000 remaining. Comfortable, yes, but not what it should have been. That $205,000 would have been vacations I never took. Home repairs I kept putting off. The new car I needed but couldn't justify. Security in my old age if my health failed. Instead, it had bought me a luxury SUV I'd never drive and a vacation I'd never take. My hands were shaking with something I hadn't felt in years. Rage. Pure cold, clarifying rage. Richard used to say I was too soft-hearted. "Margaret," he'd tell me, "wait. No. Hannah. My name is Hannah." "Hannah," Richard would say with that gentle smile. "One day someone's going to mistake your kindness for weakness. Don't let them walk all over you." Well, Richard, I thought bitterly you were right, but I wasn't going to be walked over anymore. I pulled up the bank records on my computer, my fingers moving with surprising steadiness. Co-signer on the mortgage, primary account holder on the car loan, email documentation of promised repayment, partnership agreement for a defunct business. I had leverage, more than they knew. They wanted to treat me like a business transaction. Fine, I'd respond in kind. I didn't move from Richard's desk for hours. The house was completely silent except for the old grandfather clock in the hallway ticking away the seconds. 3 a.m., 4 a.m. The winter darkness outside my windows felt appropriate, fitting. I'd pulled out everything, every bank statement from the past 3 years, every email, every text message. I'd created a spreadsheet, something I'd learned to do during my years managing school budgets, and I listed every single transaction. Date, amount, purpose, promised repayment terms. The numbers didn't lie. People did, but numbers were honest. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I kept sipping it anyway. The bitter taste seemed right somehow. Everything felt sharp and clear in a way it hadn't in years. I was done being soft, but first I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I opened Michael's email account. "I know what you're thinking. That's an invasion of privacy. That's wrong. You're right. It was. But I'd set up that email account for him when he was 16, helped him create it for college applications, and he'd never changed the password a combination of his birthday and Richard's name. Sentimental, just like I'd raised him to be. Sentimental boys grow into sentimental men who keep the same passwords for 20 years. I clicked through his inbox, my heart hammering. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Evidence of more lies, maybe. Proof that I wasn't crazy for feeling used. What I found was so much worse. The email started 6 months ago, from Amanda, Reeves@harrisonlegal.com. Subject: We need to talk, Michael. I think we both know what happened at the office party wasn't appropriate. I'm trying to be professional about this, but I need you to understand how uncomfortable you've made my work environment. I'd like to resolve this quietly, but I need assurance that it won't happen again. Amanda, my stomach dropped. I scrolled down, found Michael's response. Amanda, I'm so sorry. I was drunk and completely out of line. There's no excuse for my behavior. Please tell me what I can do to make this right. I'll do anything. I can't lose my job over this. Olivia doesn't know, and if she found out, please, let me make this right. Michael, her response came 2 days later. I'm glad you understand the gravity of the situation. I've been thinking about filing a formal complaint, but I'm willing to consider an alternative arrangement. I have significant student loans. $87,000. The stress is affecting my work. If you could help me manage this debt, I think we could move past this incident. Let me know what you can do. Oh God. Michael was being blackmailed. I kept reading, my hands shaking so badly I could barely click the mouse. The emails went on for months. Amanda's demands escalated. First it was $2,000 a month, then $2,500, then lump sums for emergencies. Michael paid every time. He'd taken out a personal loan, maxed out 2 credit cards, and when that wasn't enough, he'd come to me. Those unexpected expenses last year, Amanda's dental work, the emergency medical bills 6 months ago, another $15,000 to Amanda because she'd threatened to go to HR. My son wasn't just broke. He was being systematically bled dry by someone who'd figured out he was too scared to say no, and Olivia didn't know. That's what made my hands stop shaking. That cold realization. Michael was hiding this from his wife, lying to her about their finances, taking money from me to pay off a woman who was blackmailing him over what sounded like a drunken pass at an office party. Was he a victim? Yes. Was he also a liar who'd been using me to cover up his mistakes? Also yes. Both things could be true. I printed out the emails, every single one, 37 pages of evidence. Then I kept digging. I found the personal loan documents, $45,000 at 18% interest. His credit card statements showed $32,000 in debt across 3 cards. The minimum payments alone were over $900 a month. I found text messages between Michael and Olivia that made my chest hurt. Olivia: Michael, we're 3 months behind on the car payment. What's going on? Michael: I told you work is slow right now. We'll catch up. Olivia: You make $180,000 a year. How are we this broke? Michael: I don't know. We just spend more than we realize. He was lying to her, constantly, and she was lying to him too. I found Olivia's emails next. She'd used our shared family computer once to check her personal email and never logged out. Her inbox was a masterclass in deception. Emails to luxury retailers, designer handbags, shoes that cost more than my monthly grocery bill, a Cartier bracelet she'd charged to a credit card Michael didn't know about. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the emails to her mother. Linda, sweetie, how are you doing? Your father and I worry about you in that big expensive city. Olivia: Mom, we're fine. Better than fine. Michael makes great money and we're very comfortable. You don't need to worry. Linda: That's good to hear. Your father feels terrible that we couldn't help you more with the wedding. Olivia: Hannah covered most of it. She insisted, actually. She's very generous. Almost too generous, if you know what I mean. Sometimes I think she's trying to buy our affection. I had to read that line 3 times. Almost too generous. Trying to buy our affection. I'd given them $200,000. I'd co-signed their mortgage. I'd believed every word they'd said about struggling, about needing help, about being grateful. And behind my back, Olivia was telling her mother that I was trying to buy their love. The rage I'd felt earlier was nothing compared to this. This was cold. calculating. This was the kind of anger that doesn't make you scream. It makes you plan. I looked at the clock. 5:30 in the morning. The winter sun wouldn't rise for another hour and a half. I had a choice to make. Option 1, confront them with everything I'd found. The blackmail, the lies, the secret spending. Demand honesty and accountability. Option 2, use this information as leverage. Make them pay back every cent while holding their secrets over their heads. Option 3, destroy them. Expose Michael's situation to Olivia, call in all the debts, and walk away from both of them forever. Richard's voice echoed in my head. Hannah, you're stronger than you think. But strong enough for what revenge justice, or just strong enough to protect myself and let the rest fall where it may. I thought about Eleanor. How she'd died alone because I'd pushed her away. How I'd justified it at the time she was overbearing, old-fashioned, didn't understand modern life. But the truth was simpler and uglier. I'd cut her out because it was easier than dealing with her, because Richard let me, because I could. And now Michael was doing the same thing to me, the cycle repeating itself like some kind of karmic punishment. Unless I stopped it, I made my decision at 6:15 in the morning as the first gray light started creeping through my windows. I would demand my money back, all of it. But I wouldn't expose Michael's secrets. Not yet, not unless I had to. Because unlike Olivia, unlike the version of myself that had hurt Eleanor, I still believed in giving people a chance to do the right thing, even if I didn't believe they'd take it. At 9 a.m. sharp, I called Gerald Hutchkins' office. Gerald had been our family attorney for 23 years. He'd handled Richard's estate, my will, the paperwork, when I'd retired. He was 72 now, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of quiet competence that came from 4 decades of practicing law. His secretary put me through immediately. Hannah. His voice was warm with familiarity. This is a surprise. What can I do for you? I need to discuss some financial matters, Gerald. Urgently. Can you see me today? There must have been something in my tone, something hard and unfamiliar, because he didn't hesitate. Come in at 11. I'll clear my schedule. His office in downtown Hartford was exactly as I remembered. Mahogany furniture that had probably been there since the 70s. Walls lined with law books that nobody consulted anymore, because everything was digital now. The faint smell of old paper and leather and coffee that had been brewing too long. Gerald himself looked older than I remembered. When had that happened? When had we all gotten so old? He gestured me to a chair and poured 2 cups of coffee without asking. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't. I set down my folder of documents. Every email, every bank statement, every promise broken. I need to know what legal recourse I have regarding loans I made to my son and daughter-in-law. His eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't say anything. Just opened the folder and began reading. The silence stretched. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20. I watched his face as he read. Saw the small muscle in his jaw tighten when he got to the cosigner documents. Saw his eyes narrow at Olivia's business partnership agreement. Saw him flip back and forth between emails and bank statements, building the whole picture. Finally, he looked up. Hannah, this is substantial. Over $200,000. I'm aware. And you're listed as co-signer on the mortgage primary account holder on the car loan and guarantor on a commercial lease that no longer exists. He paused. Did Michael and Olivia know you retained these positions? I assume they forgot, or didn't care. Gerald leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers the way lawyers do when they're thinking. Legally, you have significant leverage here. As co-signer on the mortgage, you have the right to demand your name be removed or call the loan due if payments aren't being made according to terms. As primary on the car loan, the vehicle is technically your property. You can repossess it at any time. And the cash transfers, that's trickier. He tapped the email printouts. Gifts have different legal standing than loans. However, this email from Michael where he specifically writes, "We'll pay you back as soon as we can, Mom. I promise." That transforms at least the $85,000 from a gift into a documented loan. My heart was beating faster. So I can demand repayment. You can. You can send formal demand letters. If they don't pay, you can file suit. You could place liens on their property, freeze certain accounts. He met my eyes. Or you could call in all the debts at once, which would likely force them into serious financial difficulty. Would that make me legally liable for their hardship? No. You'd be exercising your legitimate rights as a creditor. He paused. The question isn't legal, Hannah. It's personal. Are you sure you want to do this? I thought of Michael's voice on the phone. We don't want you there for Christmas, Mom. I thought of Olivia's email to her mother. Almost too generous. Trying to buy our affection. I thought of 37 pages of Amanda's blackmail emails that Michael was too scared or too ashamed to tell his wife about. I thought of Eleanor dying alone in a nursing home because I'd decided she was optional. I'm sure, I said. Gerald nodded slowly. Then we'll need to send formal demand letters, document everything, and prepare for potential legal action. This will take a few days to set up properly. I'd recommend we send the first notices on Monday, December 13th. 3 days. That's perfect, I said. Hannah, Gerald's voice was gentle. Once we do this, there's no going back. Your relationship with Michael will be permanently damaged, possibly destroyed. You need to be absolutely certain this is what you want. I met his eyes. Gerald, my relationship with Michael is already destroyed. They just haven't told me yet. We spent the next 2 hours going through every document. Gerald made notes in his precise handwriting, asked questions I couldn't always answer. Do you know their current income? Michael makes $180,000. Olivia's firm pays her around $140,000, I think. Gerald's eyebrows rose. So combined income of over $300,000 a year. Yes. And they can't pay you back, why exactly? I didn't tell him about Amanda. That felt like a betrayal too far even now. Poor financial management, I assume. Expensive lifestyle. He made another note. That actually helps your case. It demonstrates capacity to pay. They're not indigent. They've simply chosen not to honor their obligations. The legal language was cold, clinical. It made everything feel more manageable somehow. Less like destroying my relationship with my only child and more like accounting. Before I left, Gerald asked me one more question. Have you considered mediation family counseling? There might be a way to resolve this that doesn't involve legal action. I thought about it. Really thought about it. They had 3 years to respect me, Gerald. 3 years to keep their promises. 3 years to include me in their lives without me having to buy my way in. I stood up, gathering my papers. I'm done asking nicely. He walked me to the door. I'll have the demand letters drafted by Friday. You can review them before we send them Monday. Thank you, Gerald. Hannah, he touched my arm gently. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for people is let them face consequences. I wasn't sure I believed that, but I wanted to. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. December in Connecticut at its most deceptive, beautiful sunshine that promised warmth but delivered nothing but icy wind. I was in my kitchen making coffee when the doorbell rang at 10 a.m. Through the window, I saw Olivia's silver Mercedes in my driveway, the car I'd helped pay for. She was alone. Every instinct I had screamed warning. Olivia had never visited me alone, not once in 3.5 years. Every interaction we'd had was filtered through Michael or happened in group settings where she could perform her role as the perfect daughter-in-law. This was calculated, planned. I opened the door anyway. Hannah, she air-kissed both my cheeks like we were dear friends. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. She was dressed beautifully as always. Cashmere sweater and soft gray. Designer jeans that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. Her makeup was perfect, that natural look that takes 45 minutes to achieve. Come in, I said carefully. She settled on my living room sofa with practiced elegance, crossing her legs at the ankle the way women's magazines teach you, accepting my offer of tea with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We made small talk for 10 minutes. The weather, Christmas shopping, a new restaurant that had opened in Westchester that she just loved. All of it meaningless. Filler words while we circled around the real reason she was here. Finally, she leaned forward, her voice dropping to something almost conspiratorial, something that probably worked on her clients. Hannah, I want to apologize for how things have been lately. I said nothing, just waited. I know Michael was harsh on the phone the other night. About Christmas. She sighed a delicate sound. The thing is, we're going through a really difficult time financially. Michael didn't want to worry you, but his firm might be doing layoffs. The uncertainty is eating at him. And I think he took it out on you. There it was, the setup. I kept my face neutral, took a sip of my tea. I see. The stress has been terrible, for both of us. Her voice caught just slightly. Oscar-worthy performance. My parents are struggling too. My father's health isn't great, and they can't afford the medical bills. We're trying to help them, but with Michael's job situation and our mortgage, she trailed off. Let the implication hang in the air. That must be difficult, I said. No inflection, no emotion. Olivia nodded, dabbing at her eyes with one perfectly manicured finger. It is, and I know we haven't been as attentive as we should be. I know we've taken your generosity for granted. She paused, looked at me with those big eyes that had probably gotten her everything she wanted her entire life. So I was really hoping that maybe you could help us one more time. Just $30,000 to get us through the next few months. I know you've been so generous, and we really do appreciate it, even if we don't say it enough. Her smile widened. And of course, after Christmas, we'll make more time for you. Maybe we could do regular dinners again, like we used to. I miss those. I felt something shift inside me, a final piece clicking into place. This wasn't just manipulation. This was a test. She was here to see if I'd fall for it again. If I was still the soft, generous, lonely old woman who'd give anything for crumbs of affection from her son's family. My phone was on the coffee table between us. Face up, voice memo app running. I'd started recording the moment I opened the door, a skill I'd learned from 35 years of dealing with parents who claimed I'd said things I never said, who threatened lawsuits over discipline decisions, who lied with confident smiles while their children stood behind them knowing the truth. Always document. Always protect yourself. Olivia had no idea. That's such a thoughtful visit, I said, my voice warm, pleasant, giving nothing away. Let me think about it, Olivia. Her smile brightened. Victory, she thought. We chatted for another 20 minutes. She told me about the Christmas decorations they'd put up, about Olivia's parents' flight arrangements, about how excited they all were for the holiday. Never once inviting me, never once actually apologizing for excluding me. Just painting this picture of their perfect family Christmas while simultaneously asking me to fund it. When she finally left, she hugged me at the door. A real hug, warm and convincing. Thank you so much for understanding, Hannah. You're the best mother-in-law anyone could ask for. I watched her drive away in the car I'd helped pay for going back to the house I'd helped buy to plan a Christmas I wasn't invited to, with my $30,000 if I was stupid enough to give it to her. I went back inside and stopped the recording. 43 minutes of Olivia's voice, asking for money, making promises she had no intention of keeping, lying about Michael's job, lying about her father's health. I checked his Facebook that morning and he was fine posting pictures from a golf trip to Arizona. Every word documented. I saved 3 copies, computer, cloud, USB drive. Some lessons you learn the hard way. But once learned, you don't forget them. That evening I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my friend Sarah Mitchell. Sarah and I had worked together for 15 years before I became principal. She'd been a 5th grade teacher, the kind who made learning feel like magic. We'd stayed close after I got promoted closer after we both retired, but I'd been pulling away from her too, from everyone. Embarrassed maybe that my son didn't want me around. Ashamed that I'd become the lonely old woman everyone pitied. Hannah, her voice was warm with surprise. I was just thinking about you. How are you? Can we meet tomorrow? I need to talk to someone. Of course. Giuseppe's at 6 Giuseppe's, our favorite Italian restaurant in West Hartford, the one where we used to celebrate the end of every school year. Perfect, I said. Sunday evening at Giuseppe's, I told Sarah everything. We sat in a corner booth, the restaurant's warm lighting and the smell of garlic bread creating a cocoon of safety. Sarah ordered us both wine without asking. She'd always been good at knowing what people needed. I talked for an hour straight. About Michael and Olivia, about the money, about Thanksgiving and Christmas and Olivia's visit yesterday, about feeling invisible and optional and disposable. I didn't tell her about the emails I'd read, about Amanda or the blackmail or the secrets Michael was keeping. Some betrayals felt too intimate to share even with close friends. But I told her everything else. Sarah listened without interruption, her expression growing darker with every revelation. When I finally finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're doing the right thing. Am I? My voice cracked. He's my son, Sarah. What if this destroys our relationship forever? Hannah, she leaned forward, her voice fierce. What relationship? They've already destroyed it. You're just refusing to pretend it still exists. You want to know what I see? Sarah continued. I see a woman who gave everything to everyone her whole life. You gave your career everything. I saw how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed. You gave Richard everything he needed, even when it meant neglecting yourself. And now you've given Michael and his wife $200,000, and they've given you nothing but contempt in return. She took a sip of wine. Sometimes love means setting boundaries, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. But what if I'm being vindictive? What if I'm just angry and I'm going to regret this? Vindictive would be destroying them for revenge. You're protecting yourself from being exploited. There's a difference. She squeezed my hand again. And Hannah, you've earned the right to be angry. Stop apologizing for it. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The restaurant buzzed around us. Families enjoying Sunday dinner, couples celebrating anniversaries, normal people living normal lives. What if they never speak to me again? I whispered. Then you'll know they only valued you for your money, and you deserve better than that. Monday morning, December 13th, I woke up at 6 a.m. with my heart pounding. Today. It was happening today. Gerald had sent me the demand letters Friday afternoon for review. I'd read them over and over, making tiny edits, second-guessing everything. But finally I'd approved them. 3 separate letters. Professional, cold, indisputable. Letter 1 regarding the mortgage co-signature, demanding either removal of my name from the loan or full repayment of the $85,000 down payment I'd provided. 30 days to comply. Letter 2 regarding the car loan. As primary account holder, I was calling the loan due immediately. The vehicle was to be surrendered within 14 days, or I would report it as stolen property. Letter 3 formal documentation of all cash transfers as loans rather than gifts with email evidence of promised repayment. Demand for a comprehensive repayment plan within 30 days, or I would file suit to recover the funds. All 3 letters would be delivered via certified mail and email at 9 a.m. sharp. I couldn't eat breakfast. Couldn't focus on the zoos. Just sat at my kitchen table drinking coffee and watching the clock. 8:45, 8:53, 9 a.m. My phone started ringing at 9:47. Michael. I let it go to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Text message. Mom, what the hell is this? Call me now. Another call. This time from Olivia's number. Voicemail. By 10 a.m., I had 15 missed calls and 23 text messages. I sat there drinking my coffee, hands steady now, and waited. At 10:30, I heard a car in my driveway. Then another. Through the window, I saw both of them. Michael's face was red furious. Olivia looked like she'd been crying, her perfect makeup smeared. They rang the doorbell, pounded on the door. Mom, open the door. We need to talk about this. I didn't move from my kitchen table. They stayed for 25 minutes. Michael shouted. Olivia cried. Then Olivia shouted and Michael pleaded. Mom, please, we can work this out. Don't do this. Hannah, you can't be serious. We'll fight you. We'll tell everyone what kind of person you really are. This is insane. You're trying to take our house, our car, everything. I sat in my kitchen listening to my son threaten me through the door, and I felt nothing. That was the most shocking part. Not rage anymore, not even sadness, just nothing. The absence of feeling was oddly liberating. Finally, mercifully, they left. I heard their cars pull out of my driveway, heard the silence return. My hands were shaking now, my heart racing. Despite my cold exterior, despite my careful planning, the confrontation had affected me more than I wanted to admit. These were people I'd loved, people I'd trusted, and they'd come to my home not to apologize, not to make amends, but to intimidate me into submission. I called Sarah. She came over immediately. Didn't say a word, just wrapped me in a hug and held me while I shook. You did the right thing, she whispered. Don't let them make you doubt that. That afternoon, I unplugged my landline, put my cell phone on Do Not Disturb except for a few numbers. Sarah, Gerald, emergency services. Everyone else could wait. I gave myself permission to simply breathe, to process, to grieve for the relationship I'd lost, or maybe for the relationship I'd never really had. I went to a yoga class I'd been neglecting, had lunch with an old colleague from my teaching days, sat in my living room and allowed myself to cry. Not for Michael, not for Olivia, for the son I'd raised, The boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street. Who'd made me Mother's Day cards from construction paper. Who'd told me I was his hero. That boy was gone. Maybe he'd never existed the way I remembered. Maybe I'd built a fantasy version of our relationship because the real one was too painful to acknowledge. Either way, I needed to mourn him. For 3 days, I gave myself space. Time to think, time to feel, time to be certain. On Thursday, December 16th, I turned my phone back on. 73 missed calls, 42 text messages, most from Michael and Olivia, ranging from apologetic to threatening to bizarrely cheerful as if nothing had happened. But one message stood out. "Hannah, this is Robert Miller, Michael's senior partner at Harrison Legal. I understand there's been a family misunderstanding. Perhaps we could discuss this over lunch tomorrow. I'm sure we can resolve this reasonably. Call my office to arrange a time." So they were bringing in reinforcements. Michael's boss, the managing partner of a major law firm probably used to getting his way through intimidation and authority. I almost laughed. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I'd spent 35 years managing budgets and navigating school board politics. I'd faced down entitled parents who thought their money bought special treatment for their children. I'd negotiated with teachers' unions and dealt with state education bureaucrats. I'd run a complex organization with 200 employees and 1,200 students. I'd made decisions that affected hundreds of lives. And they thought Michael's boss could intimidate me. I texted back, "Mr. Miller, any communication regarding this matter should go through my attorney Gerald Hutchkins at Hutchkins & Associates. Thank you." Professional, polite, immovable. The next attempt came from someone I vaguely knew from church. Patricia Hallbrook called Friday morning, her voice dripping with false concern. "Hannah dear, I heard about the terrible situation with Michael and Olivia. You know family conflicts can be so painful. I went through something similar with my daughter years ago." I let her talk, waiting for the real pitch. Sometimes we have to be the bigger person, you know. Let things go for the sake of peace. After all, at our age, is money really worth losing your son over? There it was. "Patricia," I said calmly, "I appreciate your concern, but this isn't about money. This is about respect and accountability. Have a lovely day." I hung up before she could respond. Jessica's fingerprints were all over this. Patricia's daughter worked in marketing, probably knew Olivia professionally. They were trying to build a campaign, get people to pressure me, make me look unreasonable. It wouldn't work. That weekend, the letters started arriving. 3 of them hand-delivered to my mailbox. Expensive stationery, carefully crafted emotional manipulation. The first was from Olivia's mother, Linda. "Dear Hannah, Olivia has told me about your recent legal actions, and I must say I'm deeply troubled. Family is everything, and money is just money. Surely you don't want to drive your only son away over something so trivial. When you're older and alone, you'll regret this. I hope you'll reconsider before it's too late." With concern, Linda Chen, the condescension was stunning. When you're older and alone. I was already alone. That was the whole point. The second letter was from Michael, his handwriting. That familiar scrawl I'd seen on homework assignments and birthday cards for 35 years. "Mom, I'm sorry for how I spoke to you. You raised me better than that. I've been under incredible stress and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. Olivia and I have been struggling in ways I haven't told you about. The pressure at work, the financial stress trying to maintain this life we've built, it's been overwhelming. Can we please meet and talk? Just the 2 of us like old times. I miss you. I miss Dad. I miss who we used to be. Please give me a chance to make this right. Love, Michael." I read it 3 times. This was the son I remembered. Vulnerable, honest, reaching out. For a moment, just a moment, I almost picked up the phone. Then I saw the postscript at the bottom. "P.S. If you could pause the legal action for just a few weeks while we figure things out, I promise we'll work something out that's fair for everyone." And there it was. The real agenda hiding behind the emotional appeal. Stop the legal pressure so they could regroup. Figure out how to escape consequences. Promise things they had no intention of delivering. I set the letter aside. The third letter was the most interesting. From Olivia. No pretense of warmth this time. Just cold, calculated threat. "Hannah, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but you will lose. Michael is successful, well-connected, and respected. You're a retired school teacher living alone. Who do you think people will believe? Who do you think will have sympathy? The struggling young couple or the bitter old woman trying to control her son with money? Stop this now before you embarrass yourself further. You've already lost Michael. Don't lose your dignity, too. Olivia, I actually smiled reading this. Finally, the mask had slipped completely. This was who Olivia really was. Calculating, cruel, confident that she could manipulate any situation to her advantage. She had no idea how badly she'd miscalculated. That evening, I met Sarah for dinner at our favorite Italian place. I brought all 3 letters. She read them carefully, her expression darkening. "This is textbook emotional abuse," Sarah said flatly. She'd worked as a school counselor for 20 years before becoming a teacher. She recognized manipulation when she saw it. Michael's letter especially. The love bombing followed immediately by a demand. It's designed to destabilize you. "I know," I said quietly. "And it almost worked." "Almost only counts in horseshoes." Sarah raised her wine glass. "You're doing the right thing, Hannah. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking otherwise." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Sarah asked, "What are you going to do about Christmas? 4 days away now." "I'm going to spend it exactly how I want to," I said. "Alone, by choice. Not because I'm unwanted, but because I'm unwilling to accept crumbs." December 24th arrived cold and clear. Christmas Eve. My favorite day of the year, usually. The anticipation, the magic, the promise of family and warmth and love. This year it felt like any other day. I'd made peace with that. Or I thought I had. I'd decorated my tree, made myself a nice dinner, poured a glass of Richard's favorite wine. I had a good book and a warm fire and my own company. It should have been enough. At 6 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through the window I saw both of them, Michael and Olivia, dressed nicely. Not casually they'd planned this. Michael held a wrapped gift, medium-sized, professionally wrapped from some expensive store. Olivia's face was carefully neutral, almost pleasant. They'd strategized this visit, probably rehearsed it. Every instinct told me not to open the door, but some small part of me, the part that still remembered Michael as a child, that still held hope, made me unlock it. "Mom," Michael's voice was gentle, his old voice, the one I recognized. "Can we come in, please, just to talk? No fighting. It's Christmas Eve." I stepped aside. They settled in my living room, the space where we'd spent so many Christmases when Michael was young, where we'd opened presents and drunk hot chocolate and been a family. The wrapped gift sat on the coffee table between us like a peace offering. "We wanted to apologize," Michael began. His face was sincere, his eyes pleading. "Things got out of hand. We said things we didn't mean. And on Christmas Eve, it just felt wrong to let this continue." Olivia nodded, her smile carefully calibrated. "We've been thinking that maybe we can work something out. Some kind of payment plan for the money. Something reasonable that doesn't involve lawyers and threats." I said nothing, just watched them perform. Michael leaned forward. "The thing is, Mom, these legal demands, they're destroying us. Olivia's been having panic attacks. I can't concentrate at work. We might lose the house." His voice broke. Perfect timing. Perfect delivery. "Is that really what you want, to see your son homeless?" The manipulation was skillful. I had to admit that. The tremor in Michael's voice, the way Olivia's eyes glistened with what might have been tears, the careful invocation of my maternal instincts, all of it designed to make me feel guilty, to make me the villain. "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked quietly. Olivia's smile brightened. "We pay you back $1,000 a month. It'll take a while, but we'll be consistent. We can sign a contract, make it official, and in exchange you drop all the legal action, unfreeze the account, and we all just move forward. Start fresh." I did the math in my head. $1,000 a month for $205,000. 17 years. They'd be in their 50s. I'd likely be dead, and that wasn't even counting interest. "And what about Christmas?" I asked. "What about being part of your lives?" Michael and Olivia exchanged a glance. That look, that silent communication that told me everything I needed to know. They'd practiced this part too. "We can work on that," Michael said carefully. "But we need you to understand that our relationship needs boundaries, healthy boundaries." "You can't use money to control us," Olivia added, her voice taking on an edge. "Control them. I'd given them $200,000 and asked for nothing but inclusion. and I was the one controlling them. Healthy boundaries, I repeated softly, like excluding me from holidays, like taking my money for years and then calling me manipulative when I finally say no. Olivia's expression flickered. Just for a second the mask slipped. I saw the contempt underneath. She caught herself quickly, but it was too late. Hannah, we're trying to be reasonable. No! I interrupted, my voice hardening. You're trying to manipulate me. Again. This entire visit is a performance. The gift, the apologies, the tears, it's all calculated to make me drop my legal action so you can go back to taking my money without consequences. Michael's face flushed. That's not true. Then answer me this. I stood up, looking down at both of them. If I drop the legal action right now, will I be invited to Christmas dinner tomorrow? Silence. The kind of silence that speaks volumes. Olivia stood abruptly, her pleasant facade cracking like cheap plaster. This is exactly what I told Michael. You can't be reasoned with. You're not interested in family. You're interested in punishment. Her voice rose, all pretense abandoned now. You're a bitter, lonely old woman who uses money to manipulate people because it's the only power you have left. You've been playing the victim, but look at what you're doing. You're trying to destroy us. Take our home, our car, our security, all because your feelings were hurt. She was shaking with rage now. This isn't about love or family. This is about control. This is about an old woman who can't accept that her son grew up and chose his wife over his mommy. The words should have hurt. Maybe they would have a week ago. Now they just confirmed everything I already knew. Michael looked horrified. Olivia, but he didn't contradict her, didn't defend me. He just sat there torn between his wife and his mother and ultimately choosing silence. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out of my house. Mom, Michael started. Get out. Olivia grabbed her purse and stalked out, her heels clicking sharply on my hardwood floor. Michael lingered, his face anguished. She didn't mean, she meant every word, and you let her say it. I looked at my son, really looked at him, saw the weakness there. The cowardice. You sat there and let your wife speak to your mother that way. So yes, Michael, get out. He left. The gift remained on my coffee table unopened. After they were gone, I locked the door and leaned against it. My whole body was shaking, my heart racing. Despite my cold exterior, despite my careful planning, the confrontation had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. But this time I wasn't shaking with sadness. I was shaking with rage. They had come to my home on Christmas Eve not to reconcile, but to manipulate me one final time. They had offered false peace, false promises, false hope, all designed to make me abandon my position so they could return to exploiting me. Olivia's words echoed in my mind. A bitter, lonely old woman who uses money to manipulate people because it's the only power you have left. The projection was almost funny. She had just described herself. I walked to my phone and texted Gerald. No settlements, no compromises. Take this all the way. His response came within minutes. Understood. Merry Christmas, Hannah. You're doing the right thing. I sat down at my kitchen table, poured another glass of wine, and for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't pain or anger or confusion. I felt free. January 12th arrived with that particular kind of cold that makes your bones ache. I dressed carefully that morning. A navy suit I'd worn to countless school board meetings. Professional, authoritative. The kind of outfit that said I wasn't someone to be trifled with. Gerald had arranged the meeting for 10 a.m. at his office. Neutral territory. Clean professional with none of the emotional weight of my home or theirs. I arrived 15 minutes early. Gerald was already there, 2 thick folders of documentation spread across his mahogany conference table. Ready? He asked. I thought about Christmas Eve, about Olivia's venomous words, about Michael's silence. I'm ready. Michael and Olivia arrived at exactly 10 a.m. with their attorney. Bradley Stevens was young, couldn't be more than 30, with the kind of eager energy that suggested he'd passed the bar within the last year. He carried a leather briefcase that looked expensive and new, probably bought to impress clients. He was already in over his head and didn't know it yet. Michael looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. His suit rumpled like he'd slept in it. He wouldn't meet my gaze. Olivia's makeup was flawless, but I could see the strain underneath. The careful control that came from barely holding it together. Good. Gerald gestured everyone to seats around the conference table. The winter sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, making everything feel exposed and harsh. "Thank you all for coming," Gerald began, his voice measured and calm. "I believe we can resolve this matter efficiently if everyone approaches it honestly." Bradley Stevens cleared his throat, fresh out of law school confidence. "My clients are prepared to offer a reasonable settlement. They acknowledge there may have been miscommunications about the financial arrangements, and they're willing to establish a payment plan." $205,000, Gerald interrupted smoothly, plus interest accrued since the dates of the various loans. That comes to approximately $223,000. Your clients have 30 days to pay in full, or we proceed with legal action to enforce collection through liens, asset seizure, and garnishment of wages. Olivia's head snapped up. "That's insane! We don't have that kind of money." "Then perhaps you shouldn't have borrowed it," I said quietly. Bradley Stevens shuffled his papers. "Mrs. Brooks, surely you can see that demanding full payment within 30 days is unreasonable. My clients have a combined income of over $300,000 annually. They're not indigent. A structured payment plan over 7 to 10 years would ensure I never see that money," I finished for him. "No, 30 days for full payment or we file suit." Michael finally looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed, desperate. "Mom, please, be reasonable. We can't possibly—" "Let me show you something," I said. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. Pressed play. Olivia's voice filled the conference room crystal clear. "So I was hoping that maybe you could help us one more time. Just $30,000 to get us through the next few months. I know you've been so generous and we really do appreciate it even if we don't say it enough. And of course after Christmas we'll make more effort to include you. Maybe a nice dinner in January." The color drained from Olivia's face. The recording continued. 43 minutes of Olivia's visit to my house. Every lie, every manipulation, every false promise. When it finished, the silence in the room was absolute. "That's illegal," Olivia burst out. "You can't record someone without their permission." Gerald smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Actually, Connecticut is a one-party consent state. Mrs. Brooks was fully within her rights to record a conversation taking place in her own home." He pulled out another document. "Furthermore, this recording establishes a clear pattern of financial manipulation and false promises. Combined with email evidence of promised repayment, it transforms several cash transfers from gifts into documented loans." Bradley Stevens looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "There's more," I said. I slid a stack of printed documents across the table. Text messages, emails, bank statements. 3 years of taking my money while systematically excluding me from their lives. Every transaction documented, every promise broken, every lie exposed. I pushed one particular email forward. Michael's email from 3 years ago. "We'll pay you back as soon as we can, Mom. I promise." "Any lawyer in Connecticut will see this as a loan, not a gift," Gerald said. "You promised repayment in writing." Michael's hands were shaking. He picked up the email, staring at his own words like he didn't recognize them. "Mom, we didn't mean—" "What didn't you mean, Michael? The exclusion, the insults, the attempt to manipulate me on Christmas Eve. Which part didn't you mean?" Olivia suddenly stood her chair, scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. You're a spiteful old woman who can't accept that Michael chose me over you. This whole thing is about jealousy and control." The room went silent. Gerald's voice was ice. "Miss Chen, I strongly suggest you compose yourself. Outbursts like that don't help your case." "Case?" Olivia's voice was shrill now. "This isn't a courtroom." "Not yet," Gerald agreed. "But it will be if we can't reach an agreement today." Bradley Stevens finally found his voice. "What exactly are you proposing?" Gerald opened one of his folders. Professional. Methodical. This was why he'd been practicing law for 40 years. Full repayment of $223,000 within 30 days. If your clients cannot pay in full, we will accept the following: immediate surrender of the vehicle purchased with Mrs. Brooks' funds, removal of Mrs. Brooks' name from the mortgage with full reimbursement of the down payment she provided, and a structured settlement for the remaining balance secured by liens on any other assets they possess. "That will destroy our credit," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then you should have paid your debts," I replied simply. Olivia was shaking with rage now. All her careful composure had shattered. "You know what fine Take the car. Take whatever you want. But you'll never see us again. Never. When we have children, they won't even know you exist. You'll die alone and we won't even come to your funeral. I met her eyes steadily, cold, calm, done with being hurt. Olivia, I stopped caring about your presence in my life the moment I realized it was conditional on my money. You and Michael aren't the prizes you think you are. Michael stood abruptly. Mom, how can I, what Michael, protect myself from being exploited? Stand up for myself when I'm treated like garbage, refuse to be your ATM machine. I leaned forward. Which of these things should I not do? He had no answer, just stood there, the full weight of his choices finally crashing down on him. Gerald closed his folder with finality. We'll need your decision within 48 hours. Full payment asset surrender or we file suit. Those are your options. Bradley Stevens nodded weakly. We'll need to discuss with our clients. As they filed out, Olivia turned at the door. Her face was twisted with hatred that she no longer tried to hide. I hope you're happy, Hannah. You won. You destroyed your own son's life. I hope it was worth it. I didn't respond. The door closed behind them. Gerald turned to me, something like admiration in his eyes. That went better than expected. Better? They have no defense. The documentation is ironclad. They'll have to settle. He paused. How do you feel? I looked out the window at the gray January sky. Somewhere out there, Michael and Olivia were realizing that consequences were real, that manipulation had limits, that mothers weren't infinite wells of forgiveness and money. Good, I said quietly. For the first time in months, I feel genuinely good. They didn't wait 48 hours. By the next morning, Bradley Stevens had called Gerald with their surrender. They couldn't pay in full. No surprise there. Their actual liquid assets amounted to less than $15,000. Everything else was tied up in the house they couldn't afford, furniture they'd financed, and the lifestyle they'd built on credit, and my money. The settlement was brutal, but fair. The car, the luxury SUV worth $42,000, would be surrendered immediately. Gerald arranged for it to be sold with proceeds going directly to me. Michael and Olivia would refinance the house, removing my name from the mortgage. To do so, they had to take a cash-out refinance at a terrible interest rate because of their debt-to-income ratio. But they scraped together $85,000 to repay the down payment. The remaining balance, $96,000, was structured as a formal loan. Market rate interest. Secured by liens on their property and future earnings. Payments of $2,500 per month for the next 4 years. If they missed a single payment, the entire balance became due immediately, and I could pursue collection through wage garnishment or property seizure. Gerald was masterful in the negotiations. Every clause airtight, every protection in place. No loopholes, no escape hatches. Are you sure about this? He asked me before we finalized everything. This is a heavy burden for them. It will fundamentally change their lives. I thought about Thanksgiving alone, about the Christmas text, about Olivia's visit asking for $30,000 more while planning a holiday that excluded me. They made their choices, I said. Now they get to live with them. By January 30th, the settlement was finalized. The first payment of $2,500 was due February 15th. On February 1st, the car sale cleared. $39,500 deposited into my account. On February 10th, the refinancing went through. $85,000. In less than 2 months, I'd recovered $124,500 of my original $205,000. The rest would come slowly, but it would come, every single penny. Through mutual acquaintances, not because I asked, but because people talk, I learned about the impact on Michael and Olivia's lives. Olivia had taken a second job, evenings and weekends at a marketing consultancy freelance work she did from home. Michael was working 70-hour weeks, not from ambition anymore, but from desperate necessity. The Westchester house that had been their pride became their prison. Too expensive to maintain, impossible to sell without taking a massive loss that would still leave them owing me money. Their social life evaporated. No more expensive dinners. No more weekend trips. No more designer clothes. Sarah reported seeing Olivia at a discount grocery store one Sunday morning. She looked exhausted, Hannah, haunted almost. She saw me and literally turned her cart around to avoid saying hello. I felt no guilt, no regret. Only a quiet satisfaction that natural consequences had finally caught up with people who thought they were above them. In March, a letter arrived. Not email, not text. A handwritten letter, Michael's familiar scrawl shakier than I remembered. Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. I'm writing this because my therapist suggested it might help me process what happened. Not because I think you'll care. You were right about everything. Olivia and I took advantage of you. We justified it by telling ourselves you were wealthy, you were retired, you wouldn't miss the money. We convinced ourselves we deserved your help because we were family. The truth is, we became entitled. We stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a resource. And when you stopped being useful, we discarded you. Olivia and I are in couples therapy now. We're probably going to separate. It turns out when the money runs out and life gets hard, we don't actually like each other very much. Who knew? I don't know if I can ever repair what I broke. Not just with you, but with myself. I look in the mirror and don't recognize the person I became. I don't expect you to respond. I just wanted you to know that you taught me the most important lesson of my life, even if it took losing you to learn it. Respect isn't optional, love isn't transactional, and consequences are real. I'm sorry for everything, Michael. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Some lessons need to be learned in silence, but something in my chest loosened, just slightly. The rage that had sustained me for months began slowly to transform into something else. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the possibility of it. Someday. In September, I heard through Sarah that Michael had lost his job. Harrison Legal had done layoffs. Michael's 70-hour weeks hadn't saved him. His billable hours were down, his performance suffering under the weight of financial stress and marital problems. He'd found another position quickly, a smaller firm, less prestigious, 30% less pay. The $2,500 monthly payments were destroying them. I received a call from Gerald in October. Hannah, we need to discuss something. Michael's attorney contacted me. He's requesting a temporary suspension of payments. 6 months. He's unemployed and he has a new job, I interrupted. Yes, but at significantly reduced income. They're struggling to make the payment. Silence on my end. Hannah, legally, you don't have to agree. But I thought you should know they're in genuine hardship. I thought about it for 3 days. On the 4th day, I did something unexpected. I called Olivia directly. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice wary. Hannah, I heard about Michael's job situation. I'd like to meet with you. Alone. Coffee tomorrow, 2 p.m. at the Starbucks on Main Street. Why? Because we need to talk. Just the 2 of us. Long pause. Then, okay. She arrived exactly on time, looking like a shadow of the polished woman I'd first met. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by Target basics. No professional makeup. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked real, human, exhausted. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Then I said, "Tell me about your father." She blinked, surprised. "What? Your father? Tell me about what happened when you were 16. For the next hour, Olivia told me everything. Her father's construction business hadn't just failed, it had been sabotaged by a partner who embezzled $200,000. Tim Chen had lost everything trying to make clients whole. Lost the business, the house, his reputation. The family had moved 5 times in 3 years. Olivia had changed schools 4 times. Watched her mother work 3 jobs while her father spiraled into depression. Her parents' marriage imploded. Vicious divorce. Her younger brother went to live with their father in Arizona. Olivia stayed with Linda because someone had to help with bills. She put herself through Ohio State on scholarships, loans, and working 40 hours a week. Graduated with $87,000 in debt. I swore I'd never be powerless like my father, she said, her voice breaking. Never be the person who loses everything, who can't protect their family. So you became the person who takes everything, I said quietly. Who protects herself at anyone's expense. She flinched, but didn't deny it. I didn't hate you, Hannah. I was terrified of you. I frowned. Terrified. You represented everything I was trying to escape. The modest house, the simple life, the ordinariness. She looked down at her hands. I thought if I could just get far enough away from that, I'd be safe. If we had the perfect house, the perfect cars, the perfect life, then what happened to my father could never happen to us. But it did anyway, I said, because I made it happen, because I took and never looked at the cost. Her eyes filled with tears. I turned Michael into someone he wasn't. I turned myself into someone I hate. And I destroyed the one person who genuinely wanted to help us. We sat in silence. Finally, I said, I'm going to make you an offer, and you need to listen very carefully. I'll forgive $50,000. As a gift. No strings. Her head snapped up. But the remaining $96,000 you pay back every cent. However, I'll reduce the monthly payment to $1,500 for the next 6 years. More manageable. Why? Her voice was barely a whisper. Because I did the same thing to someone once. Richard's mother. I pushed her out of our lives because she reminded me of things I didn't want to see about myself. She died alone, and I've carried that guilt for 30 years. I leaned forward. I'm not doing this for you, Olivia, or even for Michael. I'm doing it because I don't want to become the bitter old woman you accused me of being. I want to be better than the person who hurt Eleanor. And that means giving you a chance to be better than the person who hurt me. But here are my conditions, I continued. You attend therapy, real therapy, not couples counseling to save your marriage. Therapy for your financial trauma, for your fear of poverty, for your need to control everything. She nodded, tears streaming down her face now. And Michael comes clean with you, about everything. No more secrets. About what? I pulled out my phone, showed her Amanda's emails, watched her face go white as she read about the blackmail, the affair, the lies. He's been paying her for 6 months, I said quietly. That's why you're broke, not because of your spending, because your husband was being blackmailed and was too ashamed to tell you. December arrived again. 1 full year since the Christmas text that changed everything. The first payment of $1,500 had arrived on time every month since October. Michael had found stable work at a mid-sized firm. Not prestigious, but honest. Good hours, decent pay. Olivia had launched a small consulting business from home. 4 clients, modest income. But it was hers, built on actual work instead of borrowed money and false promises. They were still together. Barely. Living in the Westchester house they couldn't afford to leave. Going to therapy twice a week. Trying to rebuild a marriage that had been built on lies and shared trauma. I'd visited once, in August. Awkward but civil. The house was different. Simpler. They'd sold the expensive furniture, canceled the lawn service, learned to cook at home instead of ordering in. We're learning to live within our means, Michael had said. Actually within our means, not just saying it. On December 20th, my phone rang. Michael. Mom, I wanted to call before texting. Would you like to come to Christmas dinner? Olivia's parents will be here. All of Emma's grandparents. Together. I paused. Emma? Oh, I didn't tell you. Olivia's pregnant. 7 months. It's a girl. We're naming her Emma Rose, after Grandma Eleanor. And you. Your middle name. Something in my chest cracked open. I'd like that, I said quietly. I'd like that very much. Christmas Day, 6 p.m. The Westchester house was decorated simply. No professional decorator. No expensive ornaments. Just lights and a tree and homemade decorations that looked like love instead of money. Olivia's parents were there. Linda and Tim reunited after 10 years apart, working on their own second chance. They greeted me warmly but warily. They knew some of the story. Tim approached me after dinner. I heard what happened, that you called in debts during the holidays. Here it comes, I thought. The judgment. Good, he said. I blinked. I taught my daughter to stand on her own 2 feet. Then I failed, and she learned all the wrong lessons. He glanced at Olivia, who was helping Michael in the kitchen. Maybe you taught her the right ones. The hard way, but the right ones. After dinner, Olivia pulled me aside. Her hands rested on her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant with my grandchild. I need to ask you something. The $50,000 you forgave, was it really a gift, or is it something I'll owe you forever? It's a gift, I said. With one condition. She tensed. What? That when Emma is older, if she ever makes you feel optional or disposable, you remember how this felt, and you don't let her. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I promise. We hugged. The first real hug we'd ever shared. Not perfect, not fixed, but real. Later that night, sitting in my own quiet house, I thought about everything that had happened. People ask me if I have regrets. The truth is complicated. I regret that I had to become someone I didn't recognize to protect myself. I regret that my grandchild's first months will be shadowed by family conflict. I regret that I ever had to choose between love and self-respect. But I don't regret standing up for myself. Michael is a better man now, not because I punished him, but because consequences forced him to grow. Olivia is healing her trauma instead of spreading it. And Emma will grow up watching adults navigate hard things imperfectly, but honestly. The money, we're halfway through repayment. Some months are late. Some months include handwritten notes. Sorry, this is 3 days late. Car trouble. Next month will be on time. It's messy and human and real. Our relationship, not what it was. Not what I'd hoped it would be. But it's honest. And honest is better than the pretty lie we were living. Would I do it all again the same way? No. I would have set boundaries earlier. I would have had harder conversations sooner. I would have been honest about my own past mistakes with Eleanor. But when they texted family only and excluded me, yes, I'd still fight back, because I finally learned what Eleanor never got to teach me. I am family, and I deserve to be treated like it. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Emma Rose Brooks was born at 6 pounds 3 ounces. Healthy, perfect. Screaming her outrage at the world. I was in the waiting room when Michael came out, his face radiant with exhaustion and joy. "Mom, do you want to meet your granddaughter?" In the hospital room, Olivia looked smaller somehow, vulnerable. She held this tiny bundle, and her face was transformed. "Do you want to hold her?" she asked. I took Emma carefully. She was so light, so fragile, so full of promise. And I thought, this is why. This is what it was all for. Not the money, not even the boundaries or the lessons. This, a new generation, a chance to do better. Emma looked up at me with unfocused eyes, and I made her a silent promise. I will love you without conditions, but I will also love myself enough to teach you that love requires respect. That family isn't about obligation, it's about honor. That generosity without boundaries isn't generosity at all. I will be the grandmother Eleanor never got to be. And I will remember what I learned from losing her, from almost losing your father, from finally finding my own worth. 6 months later, on Emma's half-birthday, Michael handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. "What's this? The money you forgave. We saved it. Every extra dollar for 6 months. His voice was thick with emotion. "We don't want gifts we haven't earned. We want to pay you back everything, because we finally understand that's not what family is for." I tried to hand it back. "Michael, I told you, and I'm telling you, we pay our debts, all of them. It's going to take us 8 more years to repay the rest, but we'll do it. Every cent." Olivia stood beside him, holding Emma. "Because you were right. Love without respect isn't love. And we want Emma to see us doing the right thing, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." I took the check, not because I needed it, but because they needed to give it. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them earn back their dignity. Today is Emma's first birthday. I'm at their house, smaller now. They moved to a modest colonial in a less expensive neighborhood, but it's filled with love and laughter and the kind of joy that money can't buy. All the grandparents are here. Linda and Tim holding hands like newlyweds. Sarah, who's become like family. Even Gerald, who brought a ridiculously large stuffed bear. Emma takes her first wobbly steps, straight to me. Michael video records it, tears in his eyes. Olivia mouths "thank you" across the room. And I understand finally what Richard meant all those years ago. "You're stronger than you think, Hannah." He wasn't talking about the strength to hurt people. He was talking about the strength to set boundaries, to demand respect, to love yourself enough to require others to love you properly. And then, and this is the hard part, the strength to forgive when they finally learn how. The cost of family was high, but the cost of losing myself would have been higher. And now, holding my granddaughter as she laughs and reaches for my face, I know it was worth it. Every difficult conversation, every sleepless night, every moment I had to choose myself instead of being chosen. Because the woman Emma will know as grandmother isn't the one who accepted crumbs. She's the one who demanded a seat at the table, and taught everyone else that she deserved to be there. So what would you do if your family treated you like an ATM machine? If they excluded you from their lives but kept your wallet close? Would you fight back like I did? Would you forgive faster? Would you walk away completely? Drop a comment below. Share your story. Tell me what city you're watching from, because here's what I learned. You teach people how to treat you. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop accepting less than you deserve. Thank you for staying with me through this whole journey. Your support means everything. If this story resonated with you, I have 2 other stories that are channel favorites. Stories about standing up for yourself and finding your strength when others try to take it away. Remember, family is about honor, not obligation. About love, not control. About respect, not manipulation. And you, yes, you watching this right now, you deserve all 3.